Today's farm system rankings are about a team that's brought in a bunch of pitching talent via trade, but can't seem to find an impact starter. It's the Oakland A's. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On MLB Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on in to Locked On MLB Prospects, your home for all things minor league baseball. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby, freelance baseball writer and podcaster, and thank you for making this your first listen every single day. If this is your first time to the show, welcome. We're excited to have you. Do us a favor, subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, Google, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, free and available on all those platforms. If you're on YouTube, special hello to you. Do us a favor, like the episode, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so that you know when new episodes come out. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Bunches. Download the Bunches app today, and when you do, our friends at Bunches have featured the Locked On MLB Bunch in the Discover tab. You can also click the link in the episode description in the show notes to join the Locked On MLB Bunch community today. So the Oakland A's have a lot of talent in this system, contrary to popular belief. The common assumption is they've lost just about every trade that they've made, but they have talent in this system. It's just the distribution of it isn't quite where it needs to be, from pitching to position players. And they do have some high-level position player talent that is either in the majors already or majors adjacent. The number one prospect we have in this system, second baseman Zack Gelof. He's actually been up for, I believe it's 39 games. He will graduate. He's on pace to graduate this year from prospect eligibility, but 69 games in the minor leagues this year in AAA with the Las Vegas Aviators. 304, 401, 529, 12 home runs, 34 extra base hits, 41 walks to 86 strikeouts, and 20 of 25 on stolen bases. Was drafted in the 2021 second round out of Virginia, was one of those guys that had a good year but really popped at the College World Series and did so well that he actually got a chance to play in AAA that year. They turned around in 22, AA to AAA, and then this year called him up, and he's been up now for about a month and a half. 39 games for Zack Gelof, playing second base for the Oakland A's. 276, 343, 566. 10 home runs, 23 extra base hits, 14 walks to 45 strikeouts, and 9 of 10 on stolen bases. He was considered to be a pretty well-developed player in college. He was a third baseman. They moved him into second, something where the arm is maybe average at best. He wasn't the most accurate when it came to the throws. And so you move him from third to second. Obviously, it's a step down the ladder as far as prestige defensively, but you can mitigate the arm issues. He's got good enough hands and all of that to make it happen. I think if you wanted to put him in the outfield, he could probably make it work there as well. His speed is above average, but he's been playing second base. And to me, it looks like it's been, the scouting report was 50 grade hit tool, 55 grade power. It feels like it's probably more 55 grade hit tool, right? It's a really simple swing. He doesn't do a lot at the plate, and he gets good exit velos with it. A lot of his home runs, it feels, are when he pulls the ball, but he can hit it to all fields. He's just 6'2", 205. He's just a strong guy. And so I think some of this, it's not so much bat speed as it is just natural strength, which makes you feel like if you can improve the bat speed, you can maybe unlock a little bit more power. But something where the issue for Zack Gelof had always been his approach, right? It had always been swing to the first pitch. It had always been chasing out of the zone. And he's gotten better at that. And he's done a better job than I thought he would when he first got promoted at not aggressively chasing out of the zone. So excited to see Zack Gelof, excited to see how well he's doing in the major leagues. Again, he will graduate off of this list by the end of the season. He's already got 39 games and won't be on there in the offseason, but right now is probably the number one prospect in the system, replacing Tyler Soderstrom at number one. Tyler Soderstrom's been in AAA most of the year. He got just under a month in the bigs, wasn't able to do a lot with it, and so was sent back down to AAA Las Vegas. 2020, I think it was a first rounder. They bought him out of a UCLA commitment, so out of high school. A lot of the draft picks for Oakland are California guys. It's just, I don't know if they're trying to save money on scouting trips or what it is, but it feels like they draft a lot of college guys. So 75 games this year in AAA Las Vegas with the Aviators. 253, 306, 533, 21 home runs, 40 extra base hits, again in 75 games, so more than one every other game. 23 walks to 88 strikeouts and 2 for 2 on stolen bases. Now, you do have to feel a little bit like any sort of offensive numbers in the PCL. We don't quite know how good they are and how reliable they are. And when Soderstrom got to the bigs, again, he spent just about one month. He struggled. Slash line in those 27 games of 165, 237, 247. 2 home runs, 3 extra base hits, 7 walks to 29 strikeouts, no stolen bases. He actually brought the strikeout rate down a little bit. 29 strikeouts in 27 games versus 88 strikeouts in 75 games in AAA. But just lefty swing, and it felt like he wasn't quite prepared from a swing decisions and pitch recognition standpoint for the bigs. Something where he is, if you can locate a chase pitch off, like out of the zone, but it looks to be in the zone out of the hand, he's going to go for it. Now, some of this may also have been the defensive deployment. There's a lot of guys who they play better when they play every day. They play better when they get a chance to play the field. And Tyler Soderstrom spent 10 games in Oakland at DH, spent 9 games at first base, and 8 games at catcher. We've talked on this show before about he is more of a first baseman than a catcher, simply because he's just not a fantastic catcher. He's probably 40 to 45 grade. The arm is good, right? It's an above average arm, but it's the blocking, the receiving, the game calling. He just hasn't done enough of it. He still hasn't done enough of it to be additive there. And then lateral moving for blocking and things like that is just not the most natural movement for him to do. Again, played a lot of DH, played a lot of first base, played a little bit, again, 8 games of catcher out of 27. Maybe he's the type of guy that needs to play every day and needs to play a defensive position versus just DHing to perform. I haven't actually pulled the splits to see how he did at each position, but it feels like that could be a possible scenario. Another high-level position player in the upper minors and has spent some time in MLB as well this year is outfielder Lawrence Butler, 6th rounder out of high school in 2018. Actually not from California. He was actually from the Atlanta area. But a guy started off at first base, but moved to the outfield. He's played all 3 outfield positions. I really enjoyed watching him in the Arizona Fall League last year. Felt like that's where he really got comfortable playing in the outfield. Still isn't completely natural. You see some read route reaction issues, but looks a lot better in the outfield now than he did earlier in the year last year. In the minors, 89 games this year between AA and AAA. 248, 350, 475 slash line. 15 home runs, 37 extra base hits, 38 walks to 78 strikeouts, 21 to 23 on stolen bases. They've called him up. He's played 18 games at the major league level. He's playing a lot of center field, which again, I don't feel like is his natural position. He can do it, but again, the reads, routes, reactions aren't necessarily fantastic. He's a good athlete. I think that's why he can get by. I still think he's better in a corner spot. But those 18 games in the majors, 218, 246, 309. 1 home run, 3 extra base hits, 1 walk to 13 strikeouts, no stolen base attempts. Massive raw power, right? I mean, probably tied with Shea Langoliers for best raw power of anybody in the organization. And Langoliers is obviously at the major league level. We call him Bangoliers. But something where strike zone recognition, swing decisions has always been a little bit of an issue for Lawrence Butler. And it's sometimes, and it's not the swing decisions he's swinging too much. It's the swing decisions, he's not always swinging enough, right? One of those situations like Emmanuel Rodriguez with the Twins, where he's a little too selective, and perfect is the enemy of good, right? If you're waiting for the perfect pitch to hit, especially at the major league level, you may never get it. And then you compound that with the fact that he does sometimes have swing and miss in the zone, especially when it's elevated, an elevated fastball. And it means that you have a guy that just, I think, needs more time in the majors to acclimate to how major league pitchers are attacking him. I still feel like he's going to be a good offensive player in the bigs, and still a believer in what Lawrence Butler can do. I still think he probably would be better in a corner, but he walks enough, not at the major league level so far. He's got one walk, but in his career, he's walked well in the minors, and the raw power is there. Your power tool is only as good as your hit tool. In just a second, I want to talk about the pitching in this system because it's not great. And we'll do that next, right here on Locked on MLB Prospects. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Bunches. It's a new app built just for sports fans where you can chat sports in real time. Click the link in the episode description and the show notes to join the app, or you can go to the Apple App Store and download Bunches now. Android users, they have a waiting list. The Android app is coming, and so not all of our MLB hosts are in the bunch yet because we're waiting on the Android app, but it is a free app where sports fans chat. And what they have done is they have actually partnered with us to, in the Discover tab, you can find a link to the Locked on MLB bunch in the app so that you can go there, connect with other baseball fans, chat about your team, chat about prospects, keep up with the latest MLB news. You can go in there. Some of our hosts are doing questions and comments via bunches, but the whole thing is you can chat about your team every day. You make us your first listen every day. So download the Bunches app today, and when you do, our friends at Bunches have featured the Locked on MLB bunch in the Discover tab. You can click the link in the show description or in the show notes to join the Locked on MLB bunch community today. Okay, so the pitching in this system is honestly a little bit frustrating. You have made so many trades for so many pitchers. Some of them are at the major league level. Ken Waldachuk came over from the Yankees. Kyle Muller is there from the Braves. Some of these are MLB guys. Freddie Tarnok, who's hurt right now with a strained calf. But a lot of these guys are still in the minors, and none of them show that they have a high ceiling. I think the only exception as far as pitchers in the system who you feel like could legitimately have a high ceiling is Mason Miller. And even there, he's a flawed prospect. So 2021 third rounder out of Gardner-Webb. And the story on Mason Miller is struggled in college, found out he was a diabetic, kind of made some things click as far as how he took care of himself, how he rebuilt his stamina between starts, things like that. But gets drafted in 2021, has just a little bit of time in rookie ball after the year, okay? Comes into 2022, shoulder issue. Doesn't get a lot of time in. I think he got 14 innings at the minor league level. Shoulder injury shuts him down. He goes to the AFL. He gets like 16 2/3 innings in the AFL. That's the first place I heard about him, was in the Arizona Fall League last year. Comes into this year, skyrockets through the system. Pitches a total of 16 innings across 6 starts in single A, double A, triple A. Now, good outings, 1-0, 2.22 ERA in those 16 1/3 innings. 31 strikeouts, so 17.1 per 9, to 5 walks, 2.8 per 9, and 3 home runs allowed. Like, really good stuff. Makes it to the bigs. He goes in 4 starts. Mason Miller goes 0-2 with a 3.38 ERA in 21 1/3 innings. He's got 22 strikeouts, which is 9.3 per 9, to 7 walks, 3 walks per 9, and 1 home run allowed. And then has a mild UCL strain. Goes on the IL, is on the IL for almost, feels like the entire season. He's made 2 rehab starts to this point. The first one on August 24th, 3 innings pitched, 3 hits, no runs, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts, 45 pitches. The second start was on the 29th, so on Tuesday, just 2 days ago. 1 inning pitched, No hits, no runs, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts, 29 pitches. I don't know the full story, if there was weather, if there was fatigue, why he only threw an inning, why he only threw 29 pitches, because he threw 45 in the first one. I know his pitch count got high, but you don't send him out for a second inning. Did he just do some work in the bullpen? I don't quite know what's going on, but the thing here with Mason Miller is the stuff is very good, right? Fastball, legitimately a 70 grade pitch. Averaged 98 miles an hour in his big league stint. It's got some run. It's got good carry up in the zone. Really good pitch. Combines it with a slider. Sits around 86 or so. I'm going to call it a plus pitch. Has a little bit of that natural drop to it. I can't quite tell if it's a gyro slider or not, but really good slider. Has a cutter. He throws around 94 miles an hour as well. And then occasionally used a changeup. Comes in right about 90 power changeup, I guess. Probably average or so. But the issue with Mason Miller is since you drafted him, he has given you 67 innings in essence in professional baseball. And it's 2 years later. You've just barely seen him pitch. And so we don't have any idea about his stamina. We don't have any idea about what he does deep into a start because we've barely seen him pitch. And the stuff is really good. Yeah, he's probably the only guy in the system that has like legitimate number one stuff. But we just have barely seen him pitch. And then when you move past Mason Miller, you have a bunch of arms that are just there. Probably your best pitcher who's not Mason Miller was actually a draft pick this year, Steven Echeverria. Prep draftee, didn't turn 18 until after the draft. But then once you get past him, you have a lot of guys who either have some promise but are raw. Thinking about Royber Salinas, he's in AA, or they've made it to the bigs or they're making their way to the bigs and they just haven't really flashed much of anything. Joey Estes, Ryan Cusick, JT Ginn, Joe Boyle. They're all AA or AAA. They've all, okay, maybe they're number 4s, maybe they're number 5s, but there's just nothing that impressive about those guys. And it feels like almost the entire system is full of these. Now, I do think this is what they targeted in these trades, right? You look at the Matt Olson trade, 2 of the cornerstones of the trades with Atlanta was you got Kyle Muller and you got Christian Pache. You DFA'd Pache already. And so far, you're not happy with what Muller does. I want to say he has an ERA over 5 with the team. It's just none of these trades, pitching-wise, have worked out for Oakland. And a lot of these trades in general haven't always worked out for Oakland. Yes, you went out and traded for Esteury Ruiz. You traded away Sean Murphy. The second best player involved in that deal with Atlanta was catcher William Contreras, and he goes to the Brewers. You get the third best player in the deal, in Esteury Ruiz, who has stolen a ton of bags, but is not even necessarily hitting his weight. And power ceiling's not really there. Yes, he has good defense, but it's a scenario where you traded away what ended up being the starter for the All-Star game in the National League at catcher for more pitchers from Atlanta and a flawed center fielder from Milwaukee, when the previous pitchers you got from Atlanta have not worked out. And then some of the other trades that you've made. You traded for Gunnar Hoglund. He is still recovering from Tommy John. He's in high A right now. And it's just, you have a ton of pitchers in this system, but none of them are that good. And with the exception of Mason Miller, none of them look like they could be they're worthy of being an opening day starter. Never mind taking playoff starts for you. And you're only going to go as far as that pitching staff can take you, right? That's a massive ballpark. It is very much, you can't count on your offense, which is not great. You can't count on your offense mashing your way to the postseason. You have to build it through pitching, and none of these pitchers have a very high ceiling. And are we assuming that when the organization moves to Las Vegas, that they're going to all of a sudden start spending money or getting better at developing pitchers? I just don't really understand what the direction of the farm system is. We traded for a bunch of number 4 and number 5 starters. We have one guy who could be a frontline guy who's barely pitched in 2 years. And outside of that, it's just we just keep trading for starters. 4 of the 5 starters right now, JP Sears, Paul Blackburn, Kyle Muller, Ken Waldichuk, were all trade acquisitions. 3 of them were acquired last year. 2 in August and 1 in December. You look at some of the injured starters. You've got Freddie Tarnok, trade from Atlanta. Luis Medina, trade from New York. Mason Miller is the only one you drafted. And I just don't quite understand what the direction of this organization is. In just a minute, we're not going to do the typical exercise where we try to figure out how the farm system plugs needs at the major league level, because there's so many needs at the major league level. But instead, we're going to look at some of the exciting young talent in here, especially with the outfielders. And we'll do that next right here on Locked on MLB Prospects. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's number 1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. So now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use. You can bet on everything from spreads to player props and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss from FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. Okay, so I've not been nice to the Oakland A's in this show, but there are some interesting and very talented prospects who are a little bit lower in the system and are gradually working their way up. So, outfielder Denzel Clarke, 2021 fourth rounder out of University of California, Northridge. Every single University of California school has University of California in their name and then just the location. No idea where Northridge is. I'm assuming the north part of the state. But he's spent 93 games last year in high A and double A, and then 64 games this year in double A. So he spent 93 games last year in single A and high A, and 64 games in double A this year. Stat line last year at the lower level of the minors, 248, 365, 469 with 15 home runs and 42 extra base hits. 56 walks to 135 strikeouts and 30 of 33 on stolen bases for Denzel Clarke. So you look at that. Power production is good. Strikeouts are not. 56 walks in 93 games. You're okay with that number. Stolen bases are good. He moves up to double A this year, playing in Midland, 64 games in double A. 261, 381, 496. 12 home runs, 27 extra base hits, 37 walks to 85 strikeouts, and 11 and 12 on stolen bases. Improves all 3 numbers on the slash line despite going to a harder level of competition. And the thing with Denzel Clarke is he is incredibly talented, but he's obviously not a perfect player. He does have things that he has to fix. One, family-wise, important to point out, he is cousins with the Nailers, so Josh and Bo. And then in this system, Miles was drafted in the draft this year. So he's related to another player in the system. He's got probably the 2 or 3 best tools in the system as far as his speed, 70 grade speed. His defense, fantastic. 70 grade defense at least. The arm's average, maybe a little bit above average, but there you go. And then the raw power is really good, but your power tool's only as good as your hit tool, and that's where Denzel Clarke struggles to pick up breaking balls, something where he chases quite a bit. He's one of those people, the tinkerers, right? They change what they're doing at the plate a lot to try to adjust for whatever deficiency they may have or find something better. And so because of the tinkering, he's not always consistent with his mechanics. So the power transfer, lower legs to upper legs, the timing, things like that aren't always quite on. But again, incredibly talented, probably the best just set of tools in the system. And if he clicks, if the hit tool clicks, which again, everything got better this year in AA. If the hit tool clicks, probably the highest ceiling of anybody in the organization. And then another really talented outfielder, younger than him, lower in the system than him, going to come up later than him, but outfielder Henry Bolte. 2022, 56th overall or so, came out of the Bay Area, grew up as an A's fan, so they went with the hometown kid. So second rounder out of high school. 101 games this year in single A. 254, 352, 429. 13 home runs, 35 extra base hits for Henry Bolte. 56 walks, good number, to 151 strikeouts. Not a great number. 27 to 34 on stolen bases. This is something, a lot of times you see these two guys grouped together in discussions about the farm system because Henry Bolte has a lot of things he does that is just a younger version of Denzel Clarke. Incredibly fast, really good defense, better power than hit, has to work on mechanically being sound, and they actually overhauled his swing during instructional league last year, trying to get him to be quicker into the zone and just make the swing shorter. A lot of work that he's doing there. Again, really good athlete. It's something where there's a very high ceiling here, but there's a very low floor here. And it feels pitching-wise, all of the guys they have drafted have been high floor, low ceiling. Or all the guys they've traded for have been high floor, low ceiling, whereas some of these position player picks, like a Henry Bolte, like a Denzel Clarke, have been high ceiling, low floor. Curious to see what happens. Curious to see how it works. Obviously, they've got more time to figure this out. But in the meantime, some more fun stuff coming up. Arizona Diamondbacks show coming up tomorrow. Stay tuned for that. In the meantime, if you have questions for the show, I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. Show's on Twitter at Locked On Farm. Tons of ways you can get them to us. Best way is probably the subtext. Links in the episode description, links in the show notes. Until tomorrow's show, remember, it's always a great time to pay a minor leaguer.